Just pack your things and go. That's all he said. No explanation, no hesitation. His voice was steady, like he'd practiced those words in his head long before saying them. I stood frozen in the middle of our living room, still holding the bracelet he gave me on our second anniversary. The silver glinted under the yellow light, mocking every promise he'd ever made. I thought he was joking at first. People don't throw away years of marriage in one sentence. But his eyes told me everything. Cold, certain, unmoved. She was sitting right behind him on the couch, his daughter, with that same smirk she wore every time she wanted to win. Her arms were crossed, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. "She's lying, Dad. She's always hated me." Those words sliced through the room, and he didn't even question them, not once. He looked at her like she was fragile glass, and at me like I was poison. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice breaking in a way I couldn't hide. He just shook his head and said, "You know what you did." But I didn't, not really. The air in the room felt heavier than my chest could handle. The walls I decorated, the home I'd built, suddenly it wasn't mine anymore. When he turned away, I packed quietly. Every folded shirt felt like a funeral. The bracelet slipped from my wrist and hit the floor with a soft metallic sound. I picked it up, fastened it again, and whispered, "Don't cry here. Not in front of them." He didn't say goodbye. The door closed behind me like a judge's gavel. The night air hit me cold and sharp, and I stood there with a suitcase in one hand, the bracelet shining on my wrist, and my heart still trying to make sense of the lie I hadn't heard yet. I looked up at the window. She was standing there, smiling like she'd won something. Maybe she had, for now. I walked away into the night, not knowing that this was more than an ending. It was a test, a cruel one, but I was about to learn how to rewrite it. I thought that night destroyed me. I didn't know it was the start of my story. I spent that first night on my friend Mira's couch. Her apartment was small but warm, filled with soft light and the faint smell of coffee that never left the air. She didn't ask for explanations. She just handed me a blanket and said, "Sleep first, talk later." But sleep never came. The ceiling had a crack shaped like a lightning bolt, and every time I blinked, I saw his face again, cold, distant, unreadable. His words echoed in my head, "You know what you did." At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed on the table. My heart jumped. I thought maybe it was him, but it wasn't. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "You finally got what you deserved." No name, no explanation. I just sat there, staring at it, the bracelet on my wrist catching the glow of the phone screen. I twisted it once, a nervous habit I didn't even notice before. It used to mean comfort. Now it meant war. By morning, the smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air. The kettle hissed softly in the background as Mira poured 2 mugs. "You should eat something," she said quietly. I nodded, but couldn't taste the food. My world had stopped moving, and everyone else's kept spinning. Later that day, I opened my phone again. I shouldn't have. His daughter's post appeared right on top of my feed, a picture of my house. Her caption read, "Finally, peace at home." My stomach twisted. The comments were full of hearts and "so happy for you" messages. I wanted to scream, to tell them the truth, but what was the point? No one would believe the woman who'd already been cast as the villain. I locked the screen and stared at my reflection in the dark glass of the TV. My eyes looked older, colder. I slipped off the bracelet, then put it back on again. Not because I missed him, because I wasn't done. That night, I promised myself I wouldn't beg, explain, or wait. They wanted me gone, fine. But they'd made one mistake. They thought I'd disappear quietly. They didn't know silence can be louder than revenge, and mine had just begun. The next few days passed in a blur of silence. Mira went to work, and I stayed behind, surrounded by the hum of her small apartment, the ticking wall clock, the kettle's soft sigh, the sound of footsteps from the neighbor upstairs. I told myself I was okay, but I wasn't. Every time I stopped moving, my thoughts replayed that night like a broken film reel. His voice, her smirk, the door closing behind me. On the third morning, while searching for a sweater in my suitcase, I found a small wooden box tucked underneath my clothes. I didn't remember packing it. Inside were old receipts, contracts, and papers I'd kept from the early years of our marriage, things I'd almost forgotten. Among them, one caught my eye. the same bank receipt from the small store downtown, the one with both our signatures when I had helped him fund his first business purchase. My throat tightened. That slip of paper wasn't just proof of money, it was proof of trust, of partnership. He hadn't built everything alone, he'd built it with me. I held the receipt against the light, the ink faded but still visible. For the first time since that night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't powerless, not anymore. I placed the receipt carefully inside my notebook and sat on the floor, my back against the couch. The smell of coffee drifted in from the kitchen. It mixed with the faint scent of old paper and ink. I thought of the house, of her fake smile, and his silence that had felt like betrayal disguised as love. The anger that rose in me wasn't wild or loud. It was calm, cold, focused. I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. I made a list in my notebook. Assets, accounts, documents, everything I had touched, managed, or paid for. The pen scratched against the paper, steady and certain. When I was done, I closed the notebook, tucked the bracelet inside the cover, and whispered to the quiet room, "You'll see." My voice didn't shake this time. Outside, a car horn blared faintly through the open window, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. I looked at the notebook, at that one small receipt lying between the pages like a secret waiting to explode. They thought they'd erased me, but I was just getting ready to leave my signature behind. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. The city outside was still wrapped in gray light, but my thoughts were clear for the first time in weeks. I poured coffee into a chipped mug and opened the notebook I'd started the night before. The receipt was still there, peeking out like a quiet reminder that I wasn't imagining any of it. I stared at my list: bank accounts, property documents, business records, and beside each one, I wrote a single word: proof. I wasn't angry anymore. I was deliberate. I knew what I had to do. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found a name I hadn't seen in years: Ravi. We'd gone to college together, and he'd become a lawyer, the kind who didn't waste time asking why, only how. I took a deep breath and hit call. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm and familiar. "Alina," he said, "it's been a while." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I need legal advice," I said quietly, "and I need it fast." There was a pause. Then, "Come by at noon." That was all. Simple, certain. I spent the next few hours arranging every document in order, labeling folders, highlighting dates and names. By the time I was done, the living room table looked like a war map. I slipped the bracelet on my wrist again before leaving, not for sentiment, but as a reminder of what betrayal had cost me. The cab ride across town felt like a long exhale. Every street, every building, every traffic light felt different now, sharper, as if the world had stopped being kind. When I walked into Ravi's office, the scent of paper and printer ink filled the air. He stood up when he saw me and gave a small nod. "You look stronger," he said. I sat down and placed the folder in front of him. "I want to protect what's mine," I said, my tone steady. He flipped through the papers, page by page, his expression turning serious. "You've got more leverage than you realize," he said finally. "If you want to end this quietly, I can do that. But if you want them to feel it," he paused. I met his eyes. "I want both." The bracelet glinted under the office light, catching the reflection of his satisfied smile. He nodded. "Then we start today." That day, I stopped surviving and started fighting back. 3 weeks after the night he threw me out, there was a knock on Mira's door. I knew that knock before I even looked up. It was steady, practiced, the same rhythm he used to use when coming home late from work. My hands froze around the mug I was holding. The coffee inside had gone cold, but my pulse hadn't. Mira peeked through the peephole, then turned to me silently. I nodded once. She opened the door. He stood there, same clean shirt, same calm expression that used to make me feel safe. Now it made my stomach twist. "Alina," he said, his voice low, careful, like he was speaking to a wounded animal. "We need to talk." I didn't answer. He stepped inside before I could stop him. "I think we both said things we didn't mean," he continued, glancing around the small apartment like it was beneath him. "Maybe it's time to come home." Home. The word almost made me laugh. He still said it like it belonged to him alone. You didn't even ask if what she said was true, I said quietly. You just believed her. His jaw tightened. She's my daughter. What was I supposed to do? Ignore her? I stood up slowly, my bracelet catching the afternoon light. You were supposed to know me, I said. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. The silence between us stretched until it cracked. I reached for my bag on the counter, pulled out a neatly folded envelope, and handed it to him. What's this? He asked, brow furrowing. Reflection, I said simply. He opened it, and the color drained from his face. Divorce papers. His fingers trembled as he read the first page. You can't be serious, he whispered. You're upset. You'll regret this. I shook my head slowly. No, you'll regret it. His daughter's voice suddenly echoed from the hallway. She'd followed him. Good, she sneered. Finally, she's leaving for good. I met her eyes, calm, cold. I'm not leaving, I said softly. I'm taking what's mine. For the first time, the confidence in her smirk flickered. I stepped closer to the door and opened it wide. Now go. They both hesitated before stepping into the hallway. I didn't slam the door, I just closed it. Quietly, deliberately. The sound of their muffled arguing carried through the thin walls as I leaned against the door, my heartbeat steady. They thought this was over, but I had only just begun. The next few days moved with mechanical precision. While they drowned in confusion, I moved in silence. Revenge, I learned, wasn't about rage. It was about rhythm. Every morning, I'd wake up, tie my hair back, pour a cup of coffee, and open the files Ravi helped me organize. We went through everything, line by line: property, investments, accounts, the business. Half of it had my name etched into the paperwork. He always called me his helper, but I was more than that. I was the backbone. And now I had proof. One afternoon, I sat across from Ravi as he arranged the final stack of documents. Once this is filed, he said, his hands are tied. He can't touch a single account without your signature. I nodded, staring at the papers spread before me. The smell of fresh ink filled the air. I ran my thumb over the edge of that same bank receipt I'd kept all these years, the one that started everything. It felt different now, heavier somehow, like justice on paper. Ravi leaned back. Are you sure you want to do this? I met his eyes. I didn't start this, but I'm going to finish it. We filed the papers that evening. The next morning, his lawyer called mine. By noon, half his accounts were frozen, and the business he'd built on my foundation began to shake. I didn't post, didn't call, didn't brag. I just waited. And when his daughter posted another smug photo, her hand on the living room wall I'd painted myself, I smiled quietly. Enjoy it while you can, I whispered. That night, I stood on Mira's balcony, the city lights flickering like small fires in the distance. The air was cool, calm, almost peaceful. I traced the edge of the bracelet with my thumb, feeling its familiar grooves. That little piece of metal had witnessed everything, every promise, every betrayal, and now, every consequence. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. You think this changes anything? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just placed the phone on the railing, watched the screen go dark, and whispered into the night, it already has. Below, a car horn echoed through the empty street. I turned, walked back inside, and closed the balcony door behind me. The reflection in the glass caught my face. Calm, unreadable. Because revenge isn't fire. It's ice. It waits. It spreads. And it never misses its mark. When the court date finally arrived, I wasn't nervous. I'd already felt every kind of pain a person could feel, and none of it scared me anymore. I dressed simply, black blouse, gray skirt, hair tied back, and wore the bracelet under my sleeve, the metal cool against my skin like quiet armor. The courthouse smelled of old paper and disinfectant, the air thick with murmurs and footsteps. He was already there when I walked in, sitting beside his lawyer, pretending not to see me. His daughter sat behind him, arms crossed, face sharp, eyes burning. I didn't look at them. I sat down, placed my folder neatly on the table, and waited. Ravi leaned closer. Remember, he whispered, we don't need to convince anyone of your worth. Just let the truth speak. The hearing began, and the words flew like blades. His lawyer tried to paint me as bitter, unstable, money-hungry. I didn't flinch. When it was our turn, Ravi stood and calmly placed the receipts, contracts, and signed agreements on the desk. Each one landed like a hammer. The room grew quieter with every page turned. Mrs. Alina's contributions, he said, were not emotional. They were financial, structural, and documented. My husband's expression cracked for the first time. His fingers tapped nervously on the table. The judge asked him directly, "Did you or did you not remove your wife from the marital home without any proof or discussion?" His throat tightened. He stammered. His daughter's eyes darted toward him, searching for a lie that would save him. There wasn't one. The silence in that moment was heavier than any argument could be. I didn't smile, didn't speak. I just watched him crumble under the weight of his own choices. When the hearing ended, I walked out slowly. His daughter followed me to the parking lot, her heels clicking like sparks on the pavement. "You think you've won," she hissed. "My dad will never forgive you." I turned, calm as glass. "He doesn't have to," I said, "but one day he'll realize who destroyed his marriage, and it wasn't me." For a second, something flickered in her eyes, not anger, but doubt. I got into the cab without looking back. As we pulled away, I touched the bracelet on my wrist and felt its cool weight. The courtroom wasn't my battlefield anymore. It was just the mirror where the truth finally reflected. The days after the first hearing felt like watching a storm fade, but knowing another one was coming. News of the case spread faster than I expected. Mutual friends reached out quietly, some apologizing, others pretending they'd always believed me. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need their validation anymore. What mattered was what was happening behind closed doors. The perfect little alliance between father and daughter was cracking. One evening, Mira got a call from someone who still lived near my old neighborhood. I listened as she whispered into the phone, then looked at me with a small, knowing smile. "He's yelling," she said. "They're fighting. The whole street can hear." I didn't ask for details. I just sat there, stirring my tea, watching the reflection of the city lights shimmer in the cup. Apparently, he had started questioning her, every word, every story she told him. The man who once believed her without hesitation was now demanding proof of everything. Lies rot fast when the light hits them. By the end of that week, they'd stopped pretending. He blamed her for lying. She blamed him for being weak. The same two people who'd thrown me out were now destroying each other without any help from me. I didn't have to lift a finger. Their voices, once united against me, had turned into a war. Ravi called to tell me the next court date was set for the following Monday. "He's desperate now," he said, "trying to negotiate." I smiled faintly. Let him try. That night, I stood on the balcony again, the air cooler than usual. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, a soft warning that change was coming. I traced my bracelet again, feeling every dent, every scratch, every piece of my past engraved into it. I thought about how they must have felt in that house. Him pacing, her shouting, the silence between them growing louder with every hour. It was poetic in a way. The same walls that once held my pain were now holding theirs. I didn't need revenge to be loud. I just needed it to be real. I turned away from the balcony and closed the window, the sound of traffic fading behind the glass. Tomorrow, I'd face them again, but this time it wouldn't be me standing on trial. They were already judging each other, and that was punishment enough. The second hearing felt different. The tension in the room wasn't about me anymore. It was between them. He looked smaller, thinner, eyes rimmed red from sleepless nights. His daughter sat 2 rows behind, arms folded, but the defiance in her face had faded. I sat quietly beside Ravi as he reviewed the final files. The air felt heavy, electric, like something was about to break. When the judge entered, the shuffle of papers stopped. Ravi stood and handed over the last piece of evidence, a detailed record of my investments, contributions, and financial involvement in his business, the same business he had once called his empire. The judge read through each page, pausing at the signed transfers, the legal agreements, the emails where he had thanked me for saving the company during its early struggles. His lawyer tried to object, but the fact spoke louder than any plea could. My husband leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. For the first time, he looked defeated. When the ruling came, it was clear and final. Half of all assets, properties, and business holdings would go to me. Recognition of my role, legal and undeniable. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just exhaled, slow and steady. But behind me, I heard a soft sound, the daughter's chair scraping as she stood abruptly. She stormed out of the courtroom, slamming the door so hard it echoed down the hall. He didn't follow her. He couldn't. When it was over, I gathered my documents, the bracelet glinting faintly beneath my sleeve. As I walked past him, he spoke, voice cracking. "Alina, please, we can fix this. Let's talk without lawyers." I stopped but didn't turn. "You should have talked before you believed lies." My tone was calm, not cruel. "Now the only thing left between us is truth, and it belongs to the court." I walked out into the afternoon sunlight. The air smelled like rain and freedom. Outside, Ravi joined me. "It's done," he said. "What happens now?" I smiled faintly. "Now," I said, looking at the bracelet on my wrist, "now I make sure this pain builds something better." That night, I called Ravi again. Together, we transferred my share of the business into a trust fund, one meant to support women who had been silenced, betrayed, or abandoned. Every dollar that left his account became a reminder. Every document I signed turned pain into purpose. He would never understand what that felt like, but someday he'd see it. Because the best revenge isn't about destruction, it's about transformation. Weeks passed, but I didn't chase updates. The story had already written itself. Mutual friends told me he'd sold the house to pay legal fees. His business was crumbling without the quiet balance I used to bring. His daughter moved out after another explosive argument, and he now lived alone in a small apartment across town. Sometimes people think losing money hurts the most, but it's never about that. It's about losing the illusion of control, and he had lost both. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, the city alive beneath me. The air was cool, carrying faint echoes of laughter and traffic. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. I sipped my coffee slowly, the steam rising between my fingers, and traced the bracelet on my wrist. It was scratched now, dulled, but I'd never take it off. It had been a symbol of love, then of loss, and now it was proof that I survived. I received one last message from him, just a few words. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Forgiveness wasn't mine to give. Peace already was. I turned toward the notebook on my table, the same one that once held my pain and plans. I opened to the last page and wrote a single sentence. "It's over." Then I closed it for good. Outside, the sky shifted from gray to gold as the sun began to set, washing the city in light. I smiled faintly, not out of pride, but relief. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimed, and I realized how quiet my heart felt. No anger, no noise, just calm. The kind that comes when you've said everything that needed saying without a word. I leaned on the railing, the cool metal under my hands, and whispered softly to the wind. They broke me once, but I found my strength again. For a moment, I let the silence answer back. It was enough. The lights in the city flickered one by one, and I turned to go inside, the bracelet catching the last bit of sunlight before fading into shadow. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting them, it's about finding peace. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone.